The afternoon sun filtered through the tall windows of the Golden Terrace, casting golden rays across the pristine white tablecloths. Olivia Bennett smoothed down her black uniform for what felt like the 100th time that day. Her hands were clammy, and her heart raced with a mixture of excitement and anxiety. This was only her second day working at the most exclusive restaurant in the city, and already she felt the weight of expectations pressing down on her shoulders at 26 years old. Olivia had spent the last 3 years pouring her heart into her art, creating paintings that expressed the depth of human emotion she observed in the world around her. But passion alone could not pay the bills. Her tiny apartment in the old district was affordable only because the heating barely worked and the walls were paper thin. She had applied to 17 galleries in the past year, and 17 galleries had politely declined her work. The rejection letters all said the same thing in different words. Her art was beautiful, but not commercially viable, so here she was, balancing plates and memorizing wine pairings instead of mixing colors on canvas. But Olivia refused to let bitterness take root in her heart. Every experience was material for her art. Every person a potential story waiting to be painted. The restaurant manager, Helen Foster, a woman in her early 50s, with kind eyes and a no-nonsense attitude, was showing Olivia the proper way to fold napkins into elegant swans when the atmosphere in the dining room shifted dramatically. It reminded Olivia of how animals sense an approaching storm. The other servers, all experienced professionals who moved with practiced grace, suddenly found urgent reasons to be elsewhere. Some disappeared into the kitchen, others busied themselves at the far end of the restaurant, and 2 actually left through the back exit. Olivia watched this strange exodus with growing confusion. Helen's expression tightened, and she placed a reassuring hand on Olivia's shoulder. Through the front entrance walked a man who commanded attention without saying a single word. Theodore Grant moved like someone who owned the ground beneath his feet and the air around him. His tailored navy suit fit him perfectly, emphasizing broad shoulders and a lean, powerful frame. His dark brown hair was styled with precision, showing hints of gray that only added to his distinguished appearance. He looked to be in his early 40s, with a face that might have been handsome, if not for the permanent scowl etched into his features. But it was his eyes that struck Olivia most. They were a deep amber color, beautiful in their intensity, yet cold as winter frost. Those eyes swept across the restaurant with evident displeasure, as if everything he saw fell short of some impossible standard only he could perceive. Helen leaned close to Olivia and whispered urgently, "That is Theodore Grant. He comes here twice a month and makes everyone miserable. He's reduced 3 servers to tears, gotten 2 fired for microscopic mistakes, and once sent back 7 different glasses of water because none met his standards. Stay away from him if you value your sanity." Olivia watched as Theodore took a seat at a corner table with a view of the city skyline. He pulled out his phone and began typing with sharp, aggressive movements. Every line of his body language screamed, "Leave me alone." The other servers were still hiding, leaving the dining room nearly empty, despite it being the lunch rush. Something inside Olivia stirred. Perhaps it was her artist's instinct to see beyond the surface. Or maybe it was simply her nature to approach rather than retreat. But she found herself picking up a menu and walking directly toward Theodore's table. Helen made a small sound of distress behind her, but Olivia kept moving. As she approached, Theodore did not even glance up from his phone. His fingers continued their rapid dance across the screen, dismissing her presence entirely. Olivia stood beside the table for a moment, observing him closely. She noticed the tension in his jaw, the way his shoulders were rigid with stress, the slight shadows under his eyes that spoke of sleepless nights. This was not just a difficult man. This was a man in pain, hiding behind walls of ice. "Good afternoon. Welcome to the Golden Terrace. My name is Olivia, and I will be taking care of you today." Her voice was warm and genuine, without the practiced false cheer many servers adopted. Theodore finally looked up, and Olivia met his cold amber gaze directly. Most people would have flinched or looked away. Olivia simply smiled. His eyes narrowed slightly, studying her with the intensity of someone trying to detect a trap. "You are new." The words were not a question, but an accusation. "Second day. I started yesterday." "Then you have not yet learned to run when you see me coming." Olivia tilted her head thoughtfully. Should I run? The question seemed to surprise him. His fingers stopped moving on his phone screen. Most people think so. Your colleagues certainly made that clear. I am not most people. The words emerged naturally, without calculation or false bravado. She added quickly, What I mean is that every guest deserves excellent service and respect. I believe in treating people the way I would want to be treated, regardless of their reputation. Theodore set his phone down completely, giving her his full attention for the first time. Something flickered in those cold eyes. Curiosity, perhaps, or maybe just disbelief. Regardless of their reputation. So you have heard about me? I have heard that you have very high standards. I respect that. Excellence should be the standard, not the exception. For a long moment, Theodore simply stared at her. Olivia held his gaze, neither challenging nor submissive, just present and unafraid. Most servers tell me what they think I want to hear. You just told me what you actually believe. Would you prefer I lie to you? Olivia asked with genuine curiosity. Theodore leaned back in his chair, and something in his severe expression softened almost imperceptibly. My name is Theodore, and no, I would not prefer lies. He picked up the menu, though his eyes remained on her face. Let us see if your confidence is justified. I want water, room temperature, no ice, no lemon, no lime. The glass must be spotless, not just cleaned, but actually clean. Can you manage that? Olivia pulled out her notepad and wrote down his specifications without a trace of intimidation. Of course. Would you like a few moments to review the menu? Or may I offer a recommendation? Theodore lowered the menu, genuine surprise crossing his features. You would dare recommend something to me? Only if you would welcome my input. I sampled several dishes yesterday during my training. The chef here is remarkably talented. If you appreciate perfectly executed classics, the pan-seared salmon with herb butter is extraordinary. The fish is sourced fresh daily, and the preparation highlights the natural flavors without overwhelming them. Theodore studied her for another long moment. His expression remained unreadable, but something in his posture relaxed slightly. Bring me the salmon, and that impossibly clean glass of water. Olivia nodded and headed toward the kitchen. Aware of Helen's shocked expression and the whispered conversations among the other servers who had begun to emerge from hiding, she prepared Theodore's water with meticulous care, inspecting the glass under the light to ensure not a single spot or streak remained. When she returned to his table, Theodore examined the glass closely, holding it up to the window. His lips pressed into a thin line, and Olivia braced herself for criticism. Then, unexpectedly, he nodded. Acceptable. Over the next hour, Olivia served Theodore his meal with attentive precision. She brought each course at the perfect temperature, ensured his water glass never fell below half full, and responded to his requests with efficiency and grace. But something unexpected happened between the mechanical transactions of service. They talked. Between courses, during the natural pauses, Theodore began asking her questions. Not the superficial small talk of polite strangers, but real questions about her life, her interests, her dreams. She found herself telling him about her painting, about the canvases that filled her small apartment, about the galleries that had rejected her work, about the stubborn hope she carried despite constant disappointment. He listened with an intensity that was almost overwhelming, as if every word mattered, as if she mattered. And slowly, almost invisibly, the ice in his amber eyes began to thaw. The following Tuesday arrived with unexpected anticipation coursing through Olivia's veins. She had spent the past week wondering if Theodore would return, if their connection had been real or simply a pleasant anomaly in an otherwise difficult man's routine. She arrived at the Golden Terrace an hour early, taking extra care with her appearance and reviewing the menu until she had every ingredient and preparation method memorized. When the lunch service began, Olivia found herself glancing toward the entrance more often than she cared to admit. Helen noticed her distraction and offered a knowing smile. He will either come back, or he will not. Either way, you made quite an impression last week. The other servers are still talking about how you handled him without breaking a sweat. At precisely noon, the door opened and Theodore walked in. His presence still commanded the room, but this time the other servers did not flee quite so dramatically. They simply gave his usual corner table a wide berth. Theodore's amber eyes scanned the dining room until they found Olivia, and something remarkable happened. The severe lines of his face softened into what might almost be called a smile. Olivia approached his table with a warm greeting. "Good afternoon, Theodore." "Welcome back." He gestured to the chair across from him, an invitation that made several nearby servers gasp audibly. "Sit with me for a moment before the rush begins. Helen will understand." Olivia hesitated only briefly before accepting. She had learned that Theodore was not a man who made casual gestures. If he wanted her to sit, he had a reason. "I have been thinking about our conversation last week." Theodore's voice was quieter than usual, almost hesitant. "You spoke about your paintings, about trying to capture human emotion on canvas. I would like to see your work." Olivia felt her heart skip. In her years of pursuing art, few people had ever expressed genuine interest in seeing her paintings. Most offered polite encouragement without any real curiosity. But Theodore's request felt different. It felt authentic. "I would be honored to show you. Though I should warn you, my apartment is not exactly a professional gallery space." Theodore's expression remained serious, but warmth flickered in his eyes. "I am not interested in professional gallery spaces. I am interested in your art." They arranged for him to visit her studio apartment that coming Saturday. As Olivia returned to work, she felt as if she were floating rather than walking. The week passed in a blur of nervous energy and frantic preparation. Olivia cleaned her apartment until every surface gleamed, rearranged her paintings 3 times, then put them back in their original positions. When Saturday afternoon arrived, she was wearing her favorite paint-stained jeans and a simple blue sweater. Having decided that pretending to be someone she was not would be pointless, Theodore arrived exactly on time. Dressed casually in dark jeans and a charcoal sweater that made his amber eyes seem even more striking. He stepped into her small apartment and immediately began studying the paintings that covered nearly every wall. Olivia watched him anxiously, trying to read his expression as he moved from piece to piece. He spent long minutes in front of each canvas, examining the brushstrokes, the color choices, the emotion she had tried to capture. "These are extraordinary." His voice was thick with emotion when he finally spoke. "This one, the woman sitting alone in the cafe, you can feel her loneliness, but also her strength. She is not defeated by her solitude. She has made peace with it." Olivia felt tears prick her eyes. That was exactly what she had been trying to convey, and Theodore had seen it immediately. He understood her art in a way the gallery owners never had. They spent the afternoon talking about art, about life, about the wounds they both carried. Theodore told her about his childhood in a wealthy family, where love was conditional and affection was earned through achievement. His father had been a demanding man who measured worth in dollars and dismissed anything that could not be quantified. Theodore had learned early to build walls around his heart, to never show vulnerability, to never trust anyone's motives. Then he met Jessica. She had seemed different, warm, and genuine in a world of calculated interactions. They married when Theodore was 30. For 3 years he believed he had found someone who loved him for who he was rather than what he possessed. The truth came out on a rainy November evening when Jessica died in a car accident. She had been driving to meet her lover, a fact revealed by the text messages on her phone. Theodore had been planning a surprise anniversary trip. Instead, buried his wife and discovered that their entire marriage had been a performance. "I stopped believing in genuine connection after that." Theodore's voice was raw with old pain. Every smile became a transaction. Every kind word became a negotiation. "I built my walls so high that I forgot what warmth felt like. I became the cold, impossible man everyone fears because it was easier than risking that kind of betrayal again." Olivia reached out and took his hand, a gesture that felt both natural and terrifying. "I understand. My father left when I was 12. Just walked out one day and never came back. My mother worked herself to exhaustion trying to provide for us, and I watched her slowly lose the light in her eyes. I learned that people leave, that love is not guaranteed, that you cannot count on anyone to stay. But I also learned that closing your heart completely means you stop living. You just exist." Theodore's fingers tightened around hers. How do you stay open? How do you keep trusting after being hurt? Olivia smiled softly. I do not trust everyone, but I try to see people as individuals rather than as representatives of everyone who hurt me before. You are not my father. I am not Jessica. We are just two people trying to figure out how to be human in a world that makes it very difficult. Something fundamental shifted between them in that moment. Theodore pulled her closer, and Olivia found herself wrapped in his arms. Feeling the steady beat of his heart against her cheek, they stood like that for a long time. Two wounded souls finding unexpected comfort in each other's presence. Over the following weeks, Tuesday became the day they both lived for. Theodore continued to have lunch at the Golden Terrace, but now he stayed long after finishing his meal, talking with Olivia during her breaks. They discovered shared loves of classical music and old movies, debated philosophy and politics, and slowly revealed the hidden parts of themselves they usually kept locked away. The restaurant staff watched their growing connection with fascination. Helen pulled Olivia aside one afternoon, her expression troubled. I care about you, so I need to say this. Men like Theodore Grant exist in a different world. They have different rules and expectations. What feels real to you might just be a temporary diversion for him. Be careful with your heart. But Olivia could not believe that. She saw the way Theodore looked at her when he thought she was not watching, as if she were something precious and fragile. She noticed how his entire demeanor changed when she approached his table, the ice melting to reveal the warm, thoughtful man beneath. She heard the vulnerability in his voice when he shared his fears and dreams. One rainy Tuesday in late October, Theodore did not take his usual table. Instead, he waited near the entrance, holding a black umbrella and looking uncharacteristically nervous. When Olivia emerged from the kitchen, he approached her directly. I have something to ask you, and I want you to know that you are free to say no without any consequences. There is an art exhibition opening tonight at the Riverside Gallery. I would be honored if you would accompany me, not as my server, but as my guest. As someone I very much enjoy spending time with, Olivia felt her breath catch. This was different from his visit to her apartment. This was public, statement that their connection meant. Something beyond the private conversations they shared. Yes, I would love to go with you. Theodore's smile transformed his entire face, erasing years of hardness and revealing the man he might have been if life had been kinder. That evening, Olivia wore a simple black dress she had bought years ago for gallery openings she hoped to have. Theodore arrived to pick her up in a sleek car, but what struck her most was not his wealth, but the way he looked at her, like she was the most beautiful thing he had ever seen. The exhibition was held in an elegant space with high ceilings and perfect lighting. Paintings and sculptures were displayed with careful attention to presentation. Theodore kept his hand on the small of Olivia's back as they moved through the gallery, a gesture that felt both protective and proud. He introduced her to gallery owners and art collectors, not as his companion, but as Olivia Bennett, a remarkable artist you should know about. He spoke about her work with genuine enthusiasm and detailed knowledge, clearly having paid close attention during his visit to her apartment. Several collectors asked for her contact information, expressing interest in seeing her portfolio. Olivia felt as if she were dreaming. This was the breakthrough she had worked toward for years, and it was happening because someone believed in her talent enough to use his influence on her behalf. But the evening took a sharp turn when they encountered Vincent Crawford, a man whose expensive suit and practiced smile immediately set Olivia on edge. Theodore's body tensed beside her, and she knew instinctively that this was not a friendly acquaintance. Vincent, Theodore said coolly. What an unpleasant surprise? Vincent's smile sharpened into something cruel. Theodore, how unexpected to see you at an art exhibition. I thought you only appreciated things that could be measured in profit margins. His eyes swept over Olivia with dismissive calculation. And who is this? I did not know you were into charity cases now. How very noble of you. The air in the gallery seemed to freeze around them. Olivia felt Theodore's hand tighten protectively on her back, and she could sense the anger radiating from him like heat from a flame. Vincent Crawford stood before them with that cruel smile still playing across his lips. Clearly enjoying the discomfort he had created, Theodore's voice, when he spoke, was cold enough to cut through steel. This is Olivia Bennett, a talented artist whose work demonstrates more integrity and vision than you have shown in your entire career. She is not a charity case. She is someone of remarkable substance, which is perhaps why you fail to recognize her value. You have always struggled to see worth in anything that cannot be exploited. Vincent's smile faltered slightly, but he recovered quickly. His eyes narrowed as he studied Olivia more carefully, as if trying to understand what Theodore saw in her. Come now, Theodore. We both know how this works. You are parading around with this girl to prove some point to yourself, to show that you have moved past Jessica's betrayal. But men like us do not end up with struggling artists who work as waitresses. We marry women from our own world, women who understand the rules of the game. Olivia felt something crack inside her chest. Not from Vincent's words, which were predictable and pathetic, but from the sudden fear that he might be right. What if this beautiful connection she had been building with Theodore was just his way of healing from his wife's betrayal? What if she was simply a temporary distraction, someone safe, because she existed outside his usual world? But before her fears could take root, Theodore stepped forward. His entire body was rigid with controlled fury, and when he spoke, his voice carried through the gallery, causing nearby conversations to halt. You know nothing about what I feel or why I feel it. You have spent your entire life reducing human connections to transactions because you are incapable of genuine emotion. Jessica betrayed me, yes, but the lesson I learned was not to avoid love. The lesson was to recognize the difference between performance and authenticity. He turned to face Olivia, and the anger melted from his expression, replaced by something so tender it made her heart ache. Olivia is not a charity case or a distraction or a statement. She is brave and talented and kind in ways I had forgotten people could be. She sees the world with an artist's eye and finds beauty where others see only ordinary moments. She approached me when everyone else ran, not because she wanted something from me, but because she saw past my reputation to the lonely, broken man underneath. She treats me like a human being rather than a bank account, and I am falling in love with her. The words hung in the air between them, raw and honest and terrifying. Olivia's eyes filled with tears as she looked at Theodore, seeing the vulnerability in his face. The fear that he had said too much revealed too much. She reached up and placed her hand against his cheek, feeling the slight stubble and the warmth of his skin. I am falling in love with you too. The words came out as barely more than a whisper, but they carried the weight of absolute truth. Vincent made a disgusted sound and turned away, muttering something about poor decisions and wasted potential, but Olivia barely noticed him leaving. Her entire world had narrowed to Theodore's amber eyes and the way he was looking at her, as if she had just handed him something infinitely precious. Theodore pulled her close, wrapping his arms around her in an embrace that felt like coming home. They stood like that in the middle of the gallery, surrounded by beautiful art, but creating something even more beautiful between them. The other guests gave them space, some smiling at the obvious affection, others whispering about Theodore Grant showing public emotion for the first time in years when they finally pulled apart. Theodore kept her hand firmly in his. Let us leave this place. I want to take you somewhere special. They drove through the city as rain began to fall, soft drops that caught the streetlights and turned everything into an impressionist painting. Theodore brought her to a small park overlooking the river, a place where benches sat beneath ancient oak trees in the city lights. Reflected on the dark water, they sat together on a bench, and Theodore began to speak. After Jessica died, I convinced myself that I was better off alone. I built my company, made my fortune, and told myself that success was enough. I became the man everyone feared, because fear kept people at a distance. I could not be hurt if I never let anyone close, but that was not living. That was just surviving. He turned to face her fully, taking both her hands in his. You changed everything, Olivia. That first day at the restaurant, when you walked up to my table while everyone else ran, something inside me cracked. You looked at me with curiosity instead of fear, with kindness instead of calculation. And every Tuesday after that, I found myself counting the days until I could see you again. Not because of the food or the service, but because being near you made me remember what it felt like to be human. Olivia felt tears streaming down her cheeks. I was so scared that first day. I needed that job desperately, and everyone warned me to stay away from you. But when I saw you sitting there, I did not see a difficult customer. I saw someone in pain, someone hiding behind walls because he had been hurt. And I understood that because I have my own walls, my own fears. Every gallery rejection made me doubt my worth. Every struggle made me question if I was fooling myself about my talent. Theodore wiped her tears away gently. Your talent is extraordinary. Those gallery owners were fools who could not recognize brilliance when they saw it. But even beyond your art, you are an exceptional person. You have every reason to be bitter and closed off, yet you remain open and kind. You face rejection with grace and continue creating because the art itself matters to you. It's not just the recognition. They talked late into the night, sharing dreams and fears, making plans and promises. Theodore told her about his desire to use his wealth for something meaningful, to create opportunities for artists who had been overlooked by the traditional gallery system. Olivia shared her vision of art that spoke to ordinary people. That brought beauty into everyday spaces, rather than being locked away in exclusive venues. As November turned to December, their relationship deepened in ways that surprised them both. Theodore began visiting Olivia's apartment regularly, not just to see her art, but to be in her presence. He would sit on her worn couch and watch her paint, fascinated by the way she lost herself in the creative process. She would read to him from her favorite books while he worked on his laptop, both of them content in the comfortable silence they had built together. Theodore used his connections to arrange meetings between Olivia and several prominent gallery owners, but he was careful to let her talent speak for itself. Introducing her and then stepping back so her work could be evaluated on its own merits, 3 galleries expressed interest in showing her paintings, and one offered her a solo exhibition in the spring. Olivia continued working at the Golden Terrace, though her circumstances had changed dramatically. Helen had become a trusted friend, celebrating each of Olivia's successes with genuine joy. The other servers had stopped viewing Theodore as a nightmare customer and started seeing him as a man who had simply needed the right person to help him remember how to be human. On a cold Tuesday in mid-December, Theodore arrived at the restaurant carrying a small velvet box. Olivia noticed it immediately, her heart beginning to race. He requested his usual table, but this time he asked Helen if she could spare Olivia for an extended break. Helen winked and shooed them both toward the corner table. Theodore seemed nervous in a way Olivia had never seen before. His hands shook slightly as he reached across the table to take hers. 6 months ago, I was a man who had given up on joy, on connection, on love. I went through each day performing the necessary tasks, but feeling nothing real. I had convinced myself that was enough, that emotional safety was worth the cost of emotional emptiness. Then you walked up to my table and asked if you should run away like everyone else. You met my coldness with warmth, my rudeness with patience, my walls with gentle persistence. You did not try to fix me or change me. You simply saw me, really saw me, and decided I was worth knowing. Olivia, you have given me back my life. You have shown me that vulnerability is not weakness, that opening your heart is not foolish, that love is worth the risk of pain. He opened the velvet box, revealing a ring that took Olivia's breath away. It was a single diamond surrounded by smaller sapphires, elegant and unique, clearly chosen with great care. I am not asking you to marry me because I want to possess you or control you. I am asking because I cannot imagine my future without you in it. Because you make me want to be better, kinder, more present. Because when I think about growing old, I want to do it while watching you create beautiful art and listening to you talk about the stories behind each painting. Tears streamed down Olivia's face as she looked at the ring, then at Theodore, then back at the ring. She thought about the journey that had brought them to this moment. The years of rejection and struggle, the painful lessons about trust and vulnerability, the courage it took to approach a difficult man and see the hurting person beneath the harsh exterior. Yes, the word came out strong and clear, filled with absolute certainty. Yes, I will marry you. Theodore's face transformed with joy so pure it was almost painful to witness. He slipped the ring onto her finger, and it fit perfectly, as if it had been made specifically for her. They kissed across the table, ignoring the applause that erupted from the restaurant staff, who had been watching from a respectful distance. Helen approached with champagne and glasses, her eyes bright with tears. "I take back every warning I gave you. Sometimes the most unlikely connections turn out to be the most real." Theodore stood and embraced Helen warmly. "Thank you for not firing Olivia that first day when she ignored your advice and approached my table anyway." Helen laughed. "I considered it. But something told me that girl knew what she was doing." As the afternoon faded into evening, Olivia and Theodore sat together at the table where they had first connected, making plans for their future. They talked about combining their resources to create a foundation that would support emerging artists, about traveling to see the great museums of the world, about building a life based on authenticity and mutual respect. Theodore looked at Olivia with wonder. "I spent so many years afraid of being hurt again that I forgot how to truly live. You taught me that the risk of pain is worth the possibility of joy." Olivia smiled and squeezed his hand. "And you taught me that my worth is not determined by gallery owners or critics or anyone else. You saw value in me when I was struggling to see it in myself." We healed each other, not by fixing what was broken, but by accepting each other completely and giving each other space to grow. As they left the restaurant that evening, walking hand in hand into the cold December night, both of them felt the profound gratitude of two people who had found unexpected love in the most unlikely place. Theodore had entered that restaurant months ago as a man who drove everyone away, armored against connection and convinced that isolation was safety. Olivia had been a struggling artist, wondering if her dreams would ever materialize, if anyone would ever truly see her. But life has a way of surprising us when we least expect it. Sometimes the person we need most appears in the most ordinary moment. Sometimes courage looks like simply approaching someone when everyone else runs away. Sometimes love means seeing past the wall someone has built and recognizing the wounded heart underneath. And sometimes, just sometimes, a millionaire who drives all the waiters away meets a girl brave enough to take his order, and everything changes. Their story was not about wealth or status or dramatic gestures. It was about two people who had the courage to be vulnerable, the wisdom to see beyond surface appearances, and the grace to give each other the gift of being truly seen. In a world that often values performance over authenticity, they had found something rare and precious. They had found each other, and in doing so, they had found themselves. The end.